Are you sick of waking up with anxiety and regret after drinking? I get it. I was a weekend binge drinker, fooling myself into believing I was detoxing all week, only to retox every weekend and live completely outside of alignment with my values. As a former personal trainer who cared about health, that disconnect pushed me to finally make a change. I'm Maureen Bankovich, and this is Sober Fit Life, a podcast where we get real about alcohol, share powerful stories, and learn from wellness experts so you can thrive physically, mentally, and emotionally. Let's get sober fit. Have you ever Googled, "Am I an alcoholic?" Me too. And here's the thing, it's not a helpful question. Those quizzes just slap on a label. Yes, you are. No, you're not. But what if it's not about the label and more about how drinking actually makes you feel? That's why I created Am I Drinking Too Much? It's the quiz I wish had existed when I was searching. No scare tactics, no rock bottom required. You'll get your results and a free guide that explains gray area drinking, plus 3 science-backed strategies to reduce or interrupt cravings. Take it at soberfitchick.com/MI. That's MI, as in, am I drinking too much? soberfitchick.com/MI. Joining me today is Dr. Sara Poldmae, a force in women's health, a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, functional medicine practitioner, and yoga teacher with over 20 years of experience in the wellness field. She helps women reclaim their vitality, balance their hormones, and navigate midlife with confidence. As the founder of Meadow Hill Wellness, she blends ancient wisdom with modern science. I love that. Empowering women to tap into their body's innate ability to heal and thrive. She is also the host of Midlife, Rise and Thrive podcast, where she shares her expertise on women's health and wellness. Today, we're diving into alcohol's impact on midlife, mindset shifts, and how acupuncture can support the nervous system while taking a break from drinking or just all the time. So, Dr. Sara, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I'm really happy to have you here. How are you?
Good. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for the
thank you.
invite.
I've taken yoga next to Sara a couple of times. I had no idea she was a yoga instructor in
Mhm.
her own right. So we just discovered that. But you have so
Yeah.
graciously offered to share your perspective on alcohol and how your relationship with alcohol has changed over time. And then also what you kind of see in your medical practice when you're trying to help women with
Yeah.
midlife and thriving, as you say. Yeah, so could you tell us about that?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'll start with my journey through perimenopause. It really hit me hard and it hit me by
Hmm.
surprise. And this also will weave in alcohol as well. So, about 5 years ago, I had just recently remarried, and, things were good as far as I knew. Like, I was excited to be newly married, I was making a new home with my current husband. And, everything seemed exciting and joyful. And all of a sudden, I had these horrible episodes of tachycardia where my heart was racing at 170 beats
Wow.
per minute for no reason, just sitting at rest. And that is super,
Yeah.
super scary. If any women out there have experienced anything like that. And so I was freaking out because I've read in medical textbooks and have treated plenty of women that have described having palpitations during perimenopause. But this seemed
Hmm.
above and beyond. So I had to navigate through why it was happening. At one point, I actually had my staff at my wellness clinic take me to urgent care because my
Oh my
fingernails
goodness.
turned blue. So I was like
Yeah.
really freaked out, right? um, and being a medical practitioner, to be that freaked out over a symptom felt kind of strange because I just wasn't expecting it. It wasn't what I had seen in
Hmm.
textbooks. So I went to cardiologist. I got every cardiac workup that they thought was appropriate. And it ended up being, yeah, it might just be your
Wow.
hormones. I was like, wow, well, certainly no one has told me that, not even
Right.
my training. So I was like, huh. But the reason this ties into alcohol is because during this testing process with my cardiologist, had to wear a 2-week Holter monitor to measure like
Hmm.
what was going on in my heart and figure out whether there was anything wrong. And during that time, we had gotten married in August, but we had a trip to Seattle planned where I was wearing the monitor. But before that, we had had a beautiful reception in September for about 250 people. to celebrate our marriage because we had gotten
Right.
married alone or, just with close family. And during that party, I was not able to drink because I was put on a
Okay.
heart medication. And I'd never been to a party, I realized in my adult life, which is crazy to say looking back, but it was the first time I'd had an experience where I was at a party where I
Yeah,
couldn't
I
indulge.
can
And
relate.
it's not to say I indulged heavily at every party I'd
Hmm.
ever been to, but it's the first party where I couldn't have like a glass of wine to
Yes.
unwind. And it was just like such a really weird wake up call because, when I think back on that night, I had such a
Mm,
lovely night and I really actually engaged in some meaningful connection, even though there were 175 or 200 people. I don't even know how many people were in my backyard, but it was a big party. And I can remember so much of it in clarity that if I had drank, I would not have
right.
remembered quite as much. I mean, I wouldn't have been
Yeah.
like pass out drunk necessarily, but you get kind of that haze from the alcohol where you have a great time, but then looking back on it, there's not as many tangible moments, if
Well,
that
I
makes
love how you were
sense.
really mindful and aware, and you noticed that you were curious. You're like, well, this is interesting. I've never experienced this. So you were open to noticing. That's incredible. I love that.
And to be fair, I may not have even had that, um, you know, mindfulness at the moment because it
Hmm.
wasn't a choice. It may be that that came to me later.
Right.
I can't really remember how much thought I gave to it because it just wasn't an option. I had just started these medications that were like very clearly no alcohol
Hmm.
mixed with it. And I think it may be more of
Okay.
looking back and realizing that I had a great time and I had so many nice connections and that I remember things so clearly that made me realize, like I can
Hmm.
do this. And that's the first time I've ever done this. And
Uh-huh.
it was just like such an aha moment. That being said, I didn't give up drinking at that
Hmm.
point for good. I certainly did not drink through the process of getting diagnosed or not diagnosed because I ended up basically getting like,
Hmm.
nope, you're fine. Um, but, uh, since then, and with the changes that my body has gone through with perimenopause and all of that, I have since changed my relationship with alcohol. And I would say that I have had instances where I've imbibed, I've had instances where I haven't. But the past couple years, like I have just I don't know. I may have had 2 drinks in the month of January, and I didn't enjoy either one of them. And I can probably look back on the 6 months before this January and said, I've had 1 or 2 drinks here and there, and they didn't add any value
Hmm.
to my
That's a
life.
really good aha. It
You
didn't
know?
add any value. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the interesting thing is I guess I've rather than saying I've developed a different relationship with alcohol, I feel like I just don't have one with alcohol
Yes. I can relate to that.
anymore.
I don't either
Yeah.
anymore. And does it feel like a void, or do you not miss it?
I would say I don't really miss it. There are occasions where I'm like, I wish I could have a glass of wine, but it doesn't make
Hmm.
me feel good. And, then it goes away. Like it's not a miss, like, wow, I really miss wine. Because I guess I just realized, coming from a healthcare practitioner background, I know that alcohol is
Yes.
a poison. It doesn't do anything good for us physically. It causes cancer, at least 6 different kinds, I think.
7.
There's
Yeah.
maybe 10
Yeah.
now. I'm not sure. Yeah. But I just know that it doesn't serve us. And we can get into this a little bit later, but I also know how it impacts your hormones and how your hormones impact how your body processes alcohol. So even though there are moments when I'm like, yeah, wish I could enjoy a glass of wine. There's more moments where I'm like, I'm absolutely not going to have a glass of wine because if I have a glass of wine, I don't sleep well. And
Yeah.
sleep is one of my primary focuses in life. Like, I
Yes.
want to sleep well.
Yeah, I mean, because
So,
you we say, "I wish I could enjoy a glass of wine," because there's no doubt, as a central nervous system depressant, it does regulate your central nervous system. You get that calm feeling, but you're saying to yourself that 20, 30 minutes of relaxation from the alcohol is not worth what it's going to do to my sleep and how I'm going to feel the next day.
exactly. Like I've been really focused on sleep, and another area of my life that I've been focused on is fitness. So neither one of those goes as well when you're drinking alcohol. And I don't think and I can speak for myself. There are, I guess, people out there that can have a couple drinks and then go work out really heavy in the morning, but it
It's
does
not
affect your
recommended.
performance
Yeah. I
to
did it
some
for
level,
years and
right?
it really impacted my performance, my muscle protein synthesis. I was dehydrated. It's just
Yeah.
really not a good practice.
And what's interesting is I'm wearing a
Yes.
Whoop right now that tracks your sleep and fitness and all that, and your heart rate variability, which is a really important health indicator. And the two drinks that I had in January, and when I say two drinks, I had one glass of wine early in January that I didn't even finish. I had a
Hmm.
half a drink. And then the other time was a couple of weeks ago when I had, I think maybe it was, I don't even remember, but my heart rate variability plummeted both of those nights. And, I mean, it was a half a drink. Like, why would I take a half a drink if it's going to actually affect me that way? It
Yeah.
just doesn't, to me, make sense
Yeah. So you were
anymore.
wearing like the ultimate wearable technology with the heart rate monitor when you were having these palpitations. Um, and
Yeah,
now wearable tech, everybody can have access to it. So like the Whoop or your
exactly.
Apple, I have a Garmin, and this heart rate variability is becoming a bigger and bigger, more important marker. Could you explain that a little bit
Hmm.
to people?
Oh gosh, it's not my area of expertise, but basically it does measure like the variability in between each beat of your heart. And there are specific numbers that you can compare. So your heart rate variability will naturally change day by day, but you should
Hmm.
be in a certain range for you. And depending on your age range and your sex, and a few other factors, you want to keep it as high as
Yeah.
possible. And my heart rate variability, the two markers that I'm noticing change it the most are very interesting because they're usually tied together in this culture. The two things that affect my heart rate variability are alcohol, making it go lower,
Right.
which is not a good thing, and connection with good
Mm.
friends or loved ones, which
Higher.
makes it go
Yes.
high, which is a good thing. And what's so interesting is our culture has built itself around alcohol, so that the times that we spend with our family and friends is usually when we're
Yes.
drinking alcohol. So instead of improving our heart rate variability with
True connections.
friends, we are basically plummeting it and taking away the healthy effects that connections are supposed to make
Yes,
for
yes,
us.
because so many people say, "Well, how will I connect without alcohol?" Because they've become so reliant on it. I used to. I had social anxiety, and I would think I couldn't go out without having a drink or two to calm down. But now, without
Yeah,
alcohol, 3.5 years now in, I make such deeper connections, and that is really improving my health instead of thinking I need to drink
yeah.
to connect when you're actually disconnected after 2 drinks.
Right. And I was at a party a couple weeks ago where I, was not drinking, and I'm just looking around saying, this is a party I'm only at because my husband had me come to
Yep.
it. And it's not like I
Right.
dislike the people, but they're not
Mhm.
my people. So you become, or at least I become, I'll just speak for myself, but I become
Yes.
more selective about the rooms that
Me
I
too.
end up in. And it's just to me a more intentional way to live. And this is no
Yep.
judgment for people that come into my clinic, that come into my life. It's not that I judge people for drinking, it's more evaluating what works
Mhm.
for me in this stage
Yeah.
of my
And
life.
that's why I love to share about what alcohol truly does to our brains and our body, our brain chemistry, because that
Yeah,
helps people make more informed choices. Everybody knows alcohol
yeah,
is not good for them on some level, but that's not
yeah,
enough. But the more we can explain and understand and get the message out there that there is no safe or healthy recommended amount of alcohol, that will help people make
yeah,
more of an informed choice. So I know many women come to you in perimenopause or menopause, and they're complaining of poor sleep, they're feeling anxious, maybe weight gain, and all of these things are also impacted by alcohol. But I call this the elephant in the room. We often don't want to acknowledge that this one habit that we're doing may be negatively impacting all these other things.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's
Yeah.
start with sleep, right? So if you have a drink, your sleep will be affected. That is not a negotiable, maybe that's true, maybe
Hmm.
it's not. Alcohol affects your sleep for a few different reasons. Your liver during sleep is supposed to be going through its processes to get rid of any waste and all of that. And frankly, your liver can't do its job when it has to deal with
Right.
alcohol first. So by that in and of itself, it's just disrupting your sleep. There's probably a million other ways that scientists can tell you that it also disrupts your sleep. But another way is alcohol and its effects on
Mm,
blood sugars. So alcohol actually can plummet your blood sugars, and that can cause you to wake up at night because your body's saying, I'm really, really hungry right now. When you're not hungry, you could have a full meal, but with alcohol in your system, your blood sugars can really plummet, and that will wake you up. And I've seen that firsthand because I've worn continuous glucose
right.
monitors where I'll have my blood sugars dip at night, with or without alcohol. And so that's something I
Hmm.
pay attention to, is how I nourish my body before I go to bed. Sometimes I do actually need a small snack to be able to sleep through the night. So alcohol really, really is when you're choosing alcohol, you're choosing less productive
Yes.
sleep. And for people that sleep really, really well, again, no judgment. If you choose to drink once or twice a week in limited amounts, that's fine. We all choose
Right.
things that are bad for us occasionally. And I guess that's why I'm saying my relationship with alcohol has changed, in that I don't really
Hmm.
have a relationship with it. It's sort of like I don't have a relationship with French fries
Yeah.
anymore. Like, I can't tell you I'm never going to
Right.
have French fries again in my life, because French
Yeah.
fries are delicious. And, you know, if you have them once a month or once every couple months, I'm not thinking that's a huge impact on your life. And I feel the same way about alcohol. There's no amount of French fries that
Right.
are good. There's no amount of
Right.
alcohol that's good. So if someone has a drink once a month, I'm not going to look at their clinical chart and be like, oh my God, that's
Yeah.
a poison. But if they can't only have
Yes.
one drink a month,
That's when we
that's an
start
issue.
getting
If they
into
feel
problematic drinking.
like,
Anything over two
mhm,
drinks a week is really in this gray area that I coach to. So it's not the unicorns you're
yeah.
talking about who drink once or twice a year, and it's not the people who need medical intervention. It's the 95% of the population that are drinking on average 1 to 2 drinks a night, or 7 to 14 drinks on the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's just crazy. I mean, the health impact of having, for a woman to have 6 or 8 drinks a week, which is not unheard of and is not uncommon, it's wild.
Yeah, because
It's
we've
wild
bought
to
into these
think
studies
about.
for so long that drinking in moderation, 1 glass of wine a night, is good for you. So many people are stuck there. So can you talk about how that would affect a woman who's coming to you for menopausal symptoms and they really want to change and get healthier?
Yeah. Well, it's all
Hmm.
really connected. And sometimes I feel like when I talk about this, I feel like I'm babbling because, our hormones, a lot of the work gets done by the liver,
Hmm.
again, mostly when we're sleeping. So the liver's involved with detoxing excess estrogens. It can't do that if there's any
Can
alcohol
I
in your
stop you right
system.
there just to explain that a little bit more?
Yeah.
It's because the alcohol, right, sees the body sees alcohol as a toxin that immediately has to be taken care of. So it puts aside
The
all
first
the
one.
other processes and things it needs to metabolize and work on. That,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
prioritizes getting rid of
Exactly.
the
And it
alcohol.
is priority number one, is get this shit
Yes.
out of my
Yes.
system, excuse my French. That's really what
Hmm.
alcohol is.
Hmm.
It's crap. So the liver knows that, and the liver says, halt everything. I've got to get this out of me, out of your system. So, that can create hormonal havoc. And frankly, during perimenopause, there's a lot of
Mm.
hormonal havoc. A lot of women have a loose understanding that what happens during perimenopause is our estrogen levels decline. That's not all that's going on. Our estrogen levels do decline, but they do it in a way that can be quite the roller coaster. So the first sex hormone to decline is progesterone, and that does have like a nice slow kind of ride down,
Hmm.
down, down, down. But estrogen goes like up and down and up and down. It's like up, it's like a zigzag. If this isn't on video,
It is.
it's like up and down, up and down, and up and down until it
Uh-huh.
finally plummets. So a lot of the symptoms that we get in perimenopause, before menopause, is because of all these fluctuating levels of estrogen. So some months you may have enough to have a period, some months you may not.
Right.
And just imagine putting something as a block like alcohol in there to say, I'm sorry, we can't filter out what we need to filter out right now. We're going to have to wait a little while. Your body doesn't need to wait. It can barely handle
Right.
it without alcohol. So you're just putting in this blocking mechanism that does not serve your hormones. I think that's the
Yeah, that's a
best,
great
easiest
description.
way to describe it. But we're going to take that and look at it in a more holistic picture. And, sleep and stress are interlinked. And a lot of times in midlife, we're dealing with a lot
Mm,
of stressors. We're dealing with being perhaps empty nesters, or dealing with aging parents, or being at the height of our career, and perhaps our bodies and brains aren't working the way that they normally would because of all these hormonal fluctuations. So we just don't need that extra stress on our bodies and brains, because alcohol is obviously not good
hmm.
neurologically as well. There's just so many
Yeah.
connections there, right? So your stress hormones and your reproductive hormones and your blood sugar hormones, they all work together. And you throw alcohol in there and it's disrupting each of those systems. You know, alcohol may feel good for the 20 or 30 minutes, but you're usually more anxious
Yes.
the next day. And, you know, some people are less sensitive than others, but they also just might be a little more disconnected than the people that are
Disconnected from
noticing
their
that they're anxious.
body and the awareness.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack here. We could talk
I
about this
liked
for
how you called
hours.
alcohol the disruptor, because that's really a good
Yeah,
explanation. And it does come down to pausing. I try to encourage people to pause and say, before you take that drink, think about, how are you going to feel tomorrow? How are you going to sleep tonight? And that can be enough of a pause to say, like you did, it just doesn't make me feel good anymore, so I'm not going to do
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I also, you know, I try and lead by example for my daughter and for my patients. And, you know, I don't ever profess to trying to
Right.
be perfect by any means. We're all flawed individuals. But I do like
Hmm.
showing up this way in the world where alcohol is not as big a part of my
Right.
life anymore, because, um, you know, I don't want to show that as something that's
Yeah.
normal.
And it is so normalized and romanticized,
Yeah.
and it's legalized,
Hmm.
but I always ask this question: if alcohol were to come out today, imagine the commercials, that list all the side effects and all the problems. I wonder if people would try it if it was brand new today, and everything we know about it now would be known.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Hmm.
some people would. You know, it's just sort of like smoking. They didn't really know that
Yes.
smoking was bad for you. Even the medical community didn't really acknowledge that until the 80s. And I think it took until like the early
Hmm.
2000s. I could be wrong about the years, but it definitely took over a decade for people to really stop
Yeah, I think alcohol
smoking.
is starting to have its cigarette moment because the science
Yeah,
is coming out more
yeah.
and more, and this wearable tech is really making a difference. People are noticing, and it's accessible to
Hmm.
everyone. And yeah, it has nothing to do with
And younger
judgment. It has to
people,
do with a choice for your health.
yeah, exactly. And I think younger people are starting to drink a little bit
They
less,
definitely are.
which is a
Yes.
great thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
younger people, alcohol is not such a big thing as it was for me growing up in the 80s, but 50 and up are still drinking a lot. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
interesting.
and so that's the population that we really see really struggling with
Yeah,
drinking.
that's interesting. Well, I think the demands of everyday life and adulting can make it so that you're looking for that quick fix at the end of a long day. Sorry, I'm
And it's
plugging.
also that I was really shocked when I first started looking into this for myself. I never wanted to acknowledge, wow, I'm drinking an addictive substance every day. And when I start tying it with
Mm,
stress, even that could be work stress, coming home, that's your transition. And when you start to do that on a regular basis, then your brain remembers that and releases dopamine on your way home, that reward molecule,
yeah,
to make you do that again. So it's a habit
yeah,
with an addictive substance.
yeah, and in my clinic, the way that I approach patient care is we are very
Hmm.
lifestyle first, and making sure that the building blocks of middle age, you know, that you're doing the right things for your body and mind and
Yes.
spirit during middle age, because it's not just a physical change. It's also, you know, kind of a way, like we're supposed to step back and become more intentional as we reach
Hmm.
this phase of our lives. And we often can't do that if alcohol is in the mix from more of a spiritual and mindful perspective. It takes the mindfulness out of the
Yes.
equation. And so when I'm approaching patient care, you know, there's a lot of building blocks to healthy, happy hormones, and
Hmm.
sleep is one of them. Community and finding a strong support system, if you don't have one, is equally as important as other health changes
Yeah.
that you could have implemented. Lifting heavy weights is important. Weight bearing exercises for bone
Right.
health and metabolism, healthy
Protein.
eating, and if all of those things take. I work a lot with mindset. It takes a lot of positive mindset to implement those
Yes.
changes. And the positive mindset is that
Yeah.
you're worth it. The positive mindset is that you can do this. The positive mindset is you can be strong during midlife. You can create the body that you want during midlife, because the messaging out there, we don't need to look like we're 20-year-olds, but we can certainly create the physical form that we want if we're making a lot of intentional choices. And that takes the belief that
Yes.
you can. And I think waking up with a hangover, it's really hard to talk yourself into doing all of the
Mm-hmm.
right things every day. And saying, I'm worth it, even though I made, really bad choices last night. It just makes your job of creating a healthy lifestyle that much
Absolutely. I love how
harder.
you use the word intentional and mindful, and that those
Yeah.
two things do take a little bit more work than reaching for a drink that
Hmm.
is just, people, my clients say, but it's an easy off switch. And whereas doing
Yeah.
something like yoga, getting outside for a walk, talking with friends, that does take a little more intent, but the payoff is so much longer lasting and
Yeah.
beneficial than that quick off switch of alcohol. So my coaching is really synergistic with what you're saying, because in my gray area drinking training, I address the physiology first to help people do these lifestyle practices. I resource them like I would send them to you, because if they're not getting those things in place, they're going to go back to the alcohol because it's such an easy remedy.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's funny because my husband has definitely noticed that I drink so much less than I ever have in our 14-year relationship. And like he'll pour himself a drink and be like, "Oh, do you want one?" I'm like, no, like no, like I've said no pretty much every time you've asked for the past I don't know how long. Um, so he's like, "Are you dry? Is it dry January or is this dry 2025?" I'm like, I don't need to label this. Like it's not. Again, like I don't. I think there were times in my life when I drank too much in a way that like affected
Yeah,
me
I did too.
socially or negatively. I would never say that I considered myself a problem drinker. I think I had times when I was drinking and
Hmm.
it was a
I get that.
problem, but I never, like, I've never had difficulties doing a dry January. I've never had difficulty. Like, I don't think I had as
Hmm.
strong a relationship or addiction to alcohol as some other people did, but any alcohol is unhealthy. And there were definitely times in my life where I drank
Yeah,
way more
me
than,
too. I mean,
you
that's
know.
one of the reasons I looked at it. I
So,
realized it was really affecting my mental health. I was becoming
yeah,
increasingly anxious. I had always had depression, and here I am drinking a depressant. And then it was
yeah.
increasing my anxiety. So,
Hmm.
taking again, look at that for your mental health is so important too. That's an
Yeah.
interesting point you
And
brought
it's
up, though,
just,
because a lot of my clients will say, well, what if, my spouse or my partner, my significant other still drinks, you know?
yeah. I mean, again, because I think that's why I
Hmm.
brought it up and didn't really
Hmm.
finish my point. It doesn't affect
Yeah.
me that he drinks because I don't feel like I have a relationship with alcohol where it's like I have to
Yes.
stay away. It doesn't take much work for me to say no. It almost doesn't take any work for me to say no. Like every once in a while, I'll be like, no. And it just doesn't, like, it's not a drama in my life, or it's not like I'm so fortunate to say that it's been um, an easy process for me. And it's not like he's
Hmm.
giving me pressure, but I can imagine that there's so many marriages and dynamics that really suffer if one person, I actually had a friend maybe 10 years ago when I was still drinking pretty regularly, like, definitely when we went out socializing. I remember her saying she was on the dating sites and she wouldn't date
Yeah.
anybody that didn't drink. And I was like, wow, well, that says more about you than it does about them. And I probably had a drink in my hand when I said it because it just, to me, if someone didn't drink, I don't care. It's about them versus me, like, but I was like, that's kind of a red flag that you would
Yeah. That
say
was
that.
very insightful of you to notice that. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
a tight rope to navigate. And as you never start out intending to drink more than you want to, but over time, when you're
Yeah,
drinking an addictive substance, and if you start tying it to stress, trauma, depression, or even just celebration all the time, you start to take away that you don't know how to do those things without alcohol. So it's a relearning
yeah,
process. Yeah.
right,
But so when a
right.
patient comes to
It
you and you
really
see their numbers and you see their levels and say they're in menopause and their sleep is affected,
yeah,
how do you address that elephant in the room?
yeah. So, menopause, I just want to say, is only one
That's
day
right.
of our lives. It's the anniversary of the last time we had a period. So, that's only one day. So, perimenopause and postmenopause are kind of, different
Mm.
beasts. So, if you have gone through menopause, if you've reached the anniversary of your last day of your period, you are postmenopausal after that. And in that case, your hormones aren't fluctuating that much. You have lost most of
Mm.
your sex hormones, unless you choose to replace them, which a lot of women are doing these days. It's been proven to be
Yes.
much safer than we used to think it was. Um, so I would guide women differently. I always like if women ask about alcohol, I say it's not healthy. Like that, I'm not a substance
Hmm.
abuse counselor or coach. So I would, if they believe they had a problem, I would refer them to
Hmm.
someone like you, or someone that can help them to navigate through that. I'm certainly always happy to share my story, but that's
Hmm.
just my story. I'm not an expert. But I think where I really hold a strong opinion or really speak out against their use of alcohol, I'll look at how much they're drinking and what their
Right.
symptoms are, because if sleep is one of those major issues. I have a lot of women come in. We're in the DC area, so we have a lot of really high powered women professionals. They take their career seriously, they go out for a
Hmm.
lot of work dinners, and drinking is a
Yeah.
part of that culture, and to step away from drinks may even affect their job. Like that's how involved in our
Yeah.
culture
I used to be a
drinking is,
pharmaceutical
right?
rep. I
Like,
do know that. Yes. Hmm.
so
Hmm.
right? So where I draw the line is when a woman tells me that they're doing absolutely everything they can for
Yeah.
their health, except they have eight
Right.
drinks a week. So it's a fine line to go across, because people don't like to hear it. And I probably have lost a bunch of patients when I've had that conversation with them. But they're
Hmm.
not doing everything for their health if they're drinking two drinks a night, or,
Right.
they're just not. They may be doing a lot of things for their health, but that's one biggie that they haven't tackled yet. So, I will talk to them about cutting
Hmm.
back or potentially stopping. It really depends on which symptoms they're having. I'll refer out if I think it's, a major issue. But it's a tough one. It's a tough one because we just, even going out to these parties recently, over the past 6 months, it's just weird how people care whether you have a drink in your hand
It
or
it is, and
not.
it took me a long time to get used to that, and I talk with clients about that a lot, and it's something that, quite frankly, held me back from changing how I drank or eventually stopping drinking. It's that mirror effect. When you
Yeah.
say you're not drinking, or if you're just standing there without a drink in your hand, that subconsciously the other person who is drinking feels threatened, and it's almost like you're holding up a
Yeah, I had a
yeah,
girlfriend that she didn't wanna have a drink because she noticed I
yes,
wasn't drinking, and then she was kind of, like, feeling a little guilty about ordering a glass of wine at dinner, and I'm like, "Go
right,
ahead, like, you don't need." First of all, I'm not your doctor, so I'm not gonna talk to you about the health
right.
effects of alcohol unless you ask me a very direct question, but it is such a weird dynamic, and it is hard to get used to. I think that's probably one of the
It
biggest
is.
stumbling blocks. I mean,
Mhm.
you're the
We call
expert,
that the
right?
mirror effect. So when you say you're not drinking or you don't have a drink, people see the mirror and they see themselves. Imagine I hold up a hand mirror to you and they're like, "Oh no, well, what is Sarah thinking? And does that mean I can't have more than one drink? And is she watching me?" And actually, I want to be with someone who's drinking because I don't want anybody to notice how much I want to drink. So, and it's all so fast in their
Yeah.
head, they don't even realize. So it's not about
Mhm.
you. If someone comes back at you and says, "Why aren't you drinking? Is something wrong with you? Did you have a problem?" That kind of thing. It's really about how they feel nervous. And I'm not saying this in a judgmental way. I used to say those things when I was drinking and someone wasn't
Right.
drinking around me because I didn't want to bring attention to how much I was drinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a 20-year-old daughter who she's in a college that's a heavy
Hmm.
college partying town, and definitely her and her sorority sisters can tie one on. And I feel like the best thing I can do is
Yeah,
just model healthy behavior, because as a mom, like, she's a very bright girl. She knows that drinking, doesn't necessarily serve her, but she likes to be with her
sure.
friends. And I'm not a
Yeah,
micromanager of my daughter. Like, she is, I trust her to make good decisions. All I can do is provide a mirror
yeah,
for her,
yeah.
and when I get back from working out at 8:30 a.m. and she's just rolling out of bed, she knows, like, that everybody knows, like you said, it's a mirror thing.
But
So
you're right. You have to come to
again,
that
I'm not
conclusion on your own. But I think giving your patients information and explaining if this is
exactly.
what you're feeling, that you're not sleeping well and you're doing all the other things, then we do need to take a look at this elephant in the room, alcohol. And the best thing to do is take
Yeah.
at least a 30-day break to see how you feel.
Yeah, and you said, like, wouldn't it be interesting if alcohol got
Hmm.
presented now with knowing all the risks and stuff? What if alcohol became illegal right now? Like, what would
Well, we'd
happen?
be back in prohibition, I think. They tried that once,
Right.
and it's very hard to take away something that people really rely on to de-stress, to relax, to socialize. Because, and I
Yeah.
know because I went through the process, I had to relearn how to do those things without alcohol. On the other side of that, I can
Yeah.
say there's real freedom, and I'm more authentic, and I'm enjoying relationships more, and
Hmm.
I don't go to parties if I
Yeah.
don't want to go anymore. I don't rely on alcohol to help me get through something where I didn't really want to be there in the first place. So it's being more true to
Right.
yourself,
Exactly.
but only people can
Yeah.
only
And
they have to experience it. You can't tell anybody anything.
right, right. And yeah, that goes back to, in clinic, I'm there to hold people and walk
Yeah.
them home. I think we're all here to hold each other's hands and walk each other home. So it's not about judgment. It's more like, how do you want to feel? So when I first see a patient, I don't ask them,
Hmm.
we'll get to
Sure.
their symptoms. But the first question I want to know is, how do you want to feel in 3 months?
Mm,
How do you want to
like
feel
that.
5 years from now? Like, what things do you value? Do you want to have more energy? I don't want to talk about your fatigue. I want to talk about, do you want to feel energized? I don't want to talk about your limitations right now. I want to talk about, like, what would a perfect, healthy, fulfilled life look like to you? And then cut out the things that wouldn't align you with getting there. And I can't think of very many things that would be as disruptive
Mm,
as
yes.
alcohol, right? Like, that is in the top one. Obviously, there's other toxic things out there, toxic relationships, other toxic
Hmm.
substances, but alcohol
Yeah.
is a big one. So by looking at, like, what you want to accomplish, if you're saying yes to a drink, you're saying no
Right.
to some things. If you're saying yes to a drink, you're saying no to sleep. If you're saying yes to a drink, you're saying no to that early workout. So it's not about thinking about the things that you want in the moment. It's thinking about, like, the life you want to create for
Yeah.
yourself.
It's not short term. It's future self thinking, long term thinking, and
Yeah.
how do you really want to feel? I love that. That is so
Yeah.
powerful.
How do you want to show up for yourself and for the
How
people
do you
that
want to
you
show
love?
up? Yeah, I love that. Well, I want to shift to, I'm really curious about acupuncture. And as I said, when I'm
Hmm.
working with people and they're taking a break, I try to encourage them to try other things to regulate their central nervous system. How do you
Yeah.
think acupuncture could fit into that?
Yeah. Well, acupuncture can play a part in almost anything people are struggling, and it may not be the primary part. Like, we're not going to solve
Right.
cancer with acupuncture, but acupuncture can really play a part in almost anything you're struggling with, including alcohol addiction. There is a particular protocol that we use in the ear that's specific
Oh,
for addiction. So just putting that on the table, they use it in the military for PTSD. It's used in homeless clinics for
interesting.
addiction. It's used for a lot of different things involving the central nervous system. So one of the things that acupuncture can do is lower your stress hormones in general, balance out your stress hormones in general, which will make it easier for you to combat any
Yes.
cravings that you may have, that kind of thing. Acupuncture also just balances the system and gives you a general sense of well being, which I think is empowering for people that are trying to make changes. we can also work on any symptoms that you're experiencing, whether it be withdrawal or anxiety or depression. So we can work on the symptoms that may be there holding you back from
Mm-hmm.
making the changes. I always think of acupuncture as a catalyst. So if you're spinning your wheels and can't seem to get out of that hamster wheel to
Yes.
make the changes you need in life, acupuncture can kind of be the thing that frees you up. I think of it as like the energy in your system is like when you have a garden hose that's flowing water free flow through it, you're functioning well. But what we do is like we take the garden hose and straighten it out where it
Yeah.
has a kink so that things can
That's
flow
a great
again.
picture. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Can you tell people
Mhm.
where you practice and how you practice? And
Yeah. Sure. So I have two wellness clinics. I have one in Annapolis, Maryland, and one in Edgewater, Maryland. They're only about 15 minutes away from each other. We have myself and three other acupuncturists in our clinics. And let's see, we all have our specialties. Like I deal mostly or only with women's health, primarily in the midlife
Mhm.
space, but we have acupuncturists there that deal primarily with anxiety and more of the psycho-emotional aspects of health. We have pain management. We have a lot of different focuses in our clinic. And so if you were to call the clinic, it's Meadow Hill Wellness. If you were to call Meadow Hill Wellness, our staff would
Yeah.
help to guide you to the right practitioner for whatever you're
Now, I
struggling with.
also see you have retreats occasionally. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm not sure when this episode will air, but March 16th through the 22nd, we have a retreat in Panama, which I'm really excited about. I've teamed up with a meditation instructor, and we're really focusing on building an
Mm.
intentional life through meditation and yoga. And we'll have lots of like Dharma talks. It'll be amazing. So that's March 16th through 22nd. And then at the end of April, I believe it's the 26th to the 28th, we have a mini retreat. It's a weekend in West Virginia, which is just
Yeah.
2 hours away from Annapolis. I'm focusing on breath work in that retreat, breath
So
work and yoga
important.
and healthy eating and all of that good stuff with Trish Brewer,
Yes.
who's a dear friend and colleague.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds
Hmm.
interesting. So I'll put this in the show notes, everybody, and I will publish
Yeah.
this before your first retreat. And Sarah, I always ask people, what do you do personally to stay sober fit? So whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, or all three.
Yeah, I do so many things. And I feel right now it's taking me even more effort to stay sane
It
with the world
does.
swirling around me. Um, I really, like, lately have been focusing on my morning routine, which is an intentional before I start on
Mm-hmm.
social or work or anything like that. I have a couple books that I'm reading. One is The Journey to the Heart by Melody Beatty. It's a really beautiful book. Each day of the year has like a paragraph or two to set you up intentionally for the day, gives you nice like food for thought. There's another one called The Pivot Year, similar concept, but I read both of those passages. It only takes me a couple minutes. And then, so just making sure to stay away from social
Mm-hmm.
media in the mornings is like a
Yeah.
saving grace. Um, Focusing on fitness, making sure to schedule my workouts throughout the week has been really helpful for me because if I move my body, my brain is
Yep.
pretty
Me too.
happy. um, yeah, and incorporating some type of meditation. I don't have a set time, but I always find at least 10 to 20 minutes each day to meditate. Sometimes it's way longer, but I at least am consistent with 10 to
Yeah,
20
all
minutes.
of those are so important. The morning routine, the structure, and the stillness, the meditation. So Dr. Sarah lives it,
Mhm.
people. You heard that here. And
Not every single moment of every
no,
single
it's
day,
just
but I
that
sure
we're all
try.
trying to do our best. But thank you so much for coming
Mhm.
on and sharing all this information and your wisdom and your personal journey as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me again.
Have you ever Googled, "Am I an alcoholic?" Me too. And here's the thing, it's not a helpful question. Those quizzes just slap on a label. Yes, you are. No, you're not. But what if it's not about the label and more about how drinking actually makes you feel? That's why I created Am I Drinking Too Much? It's the quiz I wish had existed when I was searching. No scare tactics, no rock bottom required. You'll get your results and a free guide that explains gray area drinking, plus 3 science-backed strategies to reduce or interrupt cravings. Take it at soberfitchick.com soberfitchick.com/MI. That's MI, as in, am I drinking too much? Soberfitchick.com/MI.